And that's given me a don't go over time, basically, which is great. I also have just noticed when you put it in writing, I've got the longest job title in the world, so I've kept it to reward. I actually have 2 jobs in the company. I'm head of reward and global HRD as well. Very quickly, just put your hands up if you've ever heard of Laird PLC. Ooh. I did this at another conference about 6 months ago and I had 1 hand, that's fine. So let me explain who we are first of all, for those who haven't heard of us, or those who have. We have a history that stems back over 120 years, so you might know of who we were rather than who we are. We are a FTSE 250 for the moment. I will come on to that a little bit later after an announcement we made yesterday. And we connect and protect electronic devices for millions of people. So does anybody have any product by Apple on the table? Or Samsung? See, I'm not actually allowed to call it Apple. I have to call it something else. So we call it Apollo because they are a customer. Or I talk about apples and oranges. We basically put in about 6 or 7, and in some cases up to 12 products in each of those devices. So we are the company that makes these products work. Does anybody remember probably about 12 months ago now, the Samsung phone that blew up? That wasn't us. Glad to say, is something that we did right. We were on a different model of that phone, but that's the sort of technology that we provide. We also work within what's known as the Internet of Things in our different divisions. So we have 3 big divisions around the world, 10,000 people across the globe. Although we're headquartered in London, I work in the London office, and there's only about 30 of us. So in the UK, we're a really, really small employer, but we have a big footprint around the world. What I'm talking about today is our story of change. So I've been with the organisation for 4 years, so I'm talking about my experience over the last 4 years. And you'll see that we've been through a lot of change over the last 4 years. So back in the beginning of 2015, around about 2014 through to the end of 2014 into 2015, we were 7 different business units. We had a CEO who had been with us for a couple of years. He decided to reorganise the company into 7 business units, kind of devolved a lot of decision making, but kept some things very, very central. And our whole rhetoric, and it's one of the reasons why I joined the organisation, was we're going to be a $3 billion organisation by 2019. So we're going to move from FTSE 250 to FTSE 100. Fantastic story of growth. What we did is we started to structure the company around being a FTSE 100 rather than a FTSE 200. My previous CEO at the time had a bit of a mantra of build it and they will come. From a reward context, we started relooking at our reward strategy, and it became around sharing in our success, because we knew that in 2019 we were going to be very successful and we wanted our people to share in that with us. We introduced new global share plan schemes for all of our employees, so an all-employee share purchase program. Introduced a new MTIP plan for leaders, and our sales incentive plans were upgraded. I call them upgraded. Basically, we gave people a load more money, ready for the 2016 cycle. So back then in 2015, everything was about growing, everything was about providing for the future. 2016 comes along. Profit warning. This profit warning hit us incredibly hard. Q3 is when we had to announce to the city that we had to downgrade our profit expectations by 45%. Our CEO had left the business 2 months before the profit warning. So new CEO, new CFO. I'll never forget my CFO. I hired him, and then 2 days later he had to give a statement to the city about a profit warning. My CFO loves me. Clearly I couldn't tell him about it. We also had no funding for any of our incentive plans for 2016 at all. 2016 was a really, really hard year for us as a company. Didn't really lose people, which was great, because people were still believing in the theory of build it and they will come. So what have we done? 2014 through 2015 and 16, new CEO, new CFO, half our board changed. Everything around us was changing, including what we were delivering to our customers. Our customer markets were changing as well, and some of our businesses just weren't keeping pace. There were some other things that were out of our control, like global oil prices and things like that in some of our markets hit us really badly. But we kept having to then react, particularly on our sales incentives. All of our incentive programs, because it's a variable cost in the main. So we're through to 2017. I'm already exhausted because I keep changing things in Reward on about a daily basis, it feels like. And my new CEO now decides to reorganise the business into 3 divisions. We have a brand new exco, and we bring in new business leaders. And at the same time, we also went out to raise more funds. So we went through a rights issue. Anyone here who owns share plans who's ever been through a rights issue, just hold your hands up. You know how painful it is? Try explaining it to somebody in China on a shop floor, making one of the products to go into your fancy Apple phone, that your shares really aren't worth anything anymore. Our share price off the back of that profit warning reduced 49% overnight. Our company, not only our company, but our employees who had invested, they had lost a lot of money and a lot of faith in us. So we're now back in 2017, new CEO, as I said, new 3 divisions, and our new CEO has decided to change how we make decisions as well. So we have much stronger governance, as you would hope. We had a few issues that went wrong that meant that we had to bring in a lot more governance. And we decentralised decision making. So we moved from kind of a hub and spoke model where nobody spoke to each other. And now in our 3 divisions, they are more accountable for some of the decisions they're making, particularly around their profit, their margins, etc., rather than it being a bit of a closed room backdoor example. What we did in 2017 as well, we did a couple of things. One is we reviewed our share scheme. So we knew off the back of it that people had lost money. So my share schemes, the way that they are were created at the time, most countries around the world was a monthly purchase, so it wasn't that bad for them because at least they were picking up the share price at the month in time. In the US, where I have my highest proportion of people in plans though, it worked on a yearly savings plan. So some of those guys took quite heavy losses, and the day after the profit warning, I ended up having to turn my phone off because the amount of employees phoning me going, what's happened? We had to do a lot around it. So we had to review it. We had to review the cost of it. We had to review whether there was any return on the investment that we were making, but also the investment that our employees were making as well. We also came up with a new budgeting process for our management bonus. And this is the year that I became the group head of Reward. And one of the first things I did was actually put in a budgeting process, because for the last, I think it was 5 years beforehand, we didn't budget for management bonus. Some bright spark in one of our businesses who wasn't there very quickly after the rights issue and the profit warning decided that contingency, if we didn't use our contingency, that's what we would use to fund the management bonus. Quite a few of us just went, no, people want their bonuses. Heard earlier about whether or not variable payments work. I think bonuses have become an expectation now, so you have to do it. Even though personally I have a personal view that you spend a lot of money, time and effort just to piss everybody off on that one day you make all your bonus payments. Right? I used to work at Barclays. One year we spent £40 million and we just pissed everybody off because nobody had been managing everybody's expectations, but that was a previous life. So we were starting, coming back to my actual job right now, we were starting to actually put in processes that actually made sense, that meant we could budget, that meant we could talk to our employees about the fact we did have money to do these things. So all the while over the last 3 years, we have been constantly re-looking and deciding what we could and what we couldn't do. Where am I now? So this year, 2018, because in Laird we can't just leave a year alone. We've now announced yesterday our shareholders backed us delisting, and we're going to be sold to an investment house. So around about a year ago, when we thought, right, we can fix some of the basics, and then me in Reward, with my one person doing a global role, I can relax a little bit. No. We're now going to go through delisting. Our shareholders voted, how did my CEO put it yesterday? As unanimously as they could without it being 100%, which basically meant 99.9% said yes. Sometimes he tries to be a bit too fancy with words. So we're now in a bit of a holding period. We announced in January that the potential was there, so people were starting to get a little bit worried. So we now need to start thinking about this year through to when our deal completes. How do we keep people motivated? How do we keep them on track to delivering the budgets this year? Because this is why we're being bought. We've got guaranteed, but we've got budgets that we have to deliver. When right now, I don't know how I can reward people. I don't know if I can make big bonus payments. And also with one eye on the future, that I don't know the company that are taking us over, we haven't started talking to them yet about how things like long-term incentives will work. So we're in a slightly fortunate position. So my senior leaders, the ones who have shares that were part of the MTIP that was going to pay out, they're all locked in until the day the deal is done, because some people will get quite a bit of money out of the deal. That's only motivational to a point. So what we're now starting to think about is, well, how do we retain the key people after the day the deal's done? Because what we want to stop is 150 people in our equity plans, the most senior leaders around the world, all resigning the day after. Now, some of them should. That's my personal view. They should resign, they should go. But we can't obviously have everyone going. So within Reward, we are constantly, I say we, it's me and my new CHRO and my analyst, we are looking at these things constantly. And I know all of you guys are doing the exact same thing. So the conversations on the roundtables, I think we are all facing exactly the same challenges. And the question is, how do we do this? In Laird, we have a really clear view on life. We put the employee at the heart of the decision. So the decision to close our all-employee share purchase program, as an example, yes, it was the right financial decision for Laird to make, but it was also the right decision for our employees. Can't have people continue to invest in something that I know is not going to make them any money. Redoing our management bonuses as well. We are in a process of realigning all of our management bonus funds at different levels, so different percentages for different levels, and we're in the process of potentially regrading. I've just placed a piece of work on hold. Because again, from an employee's perspective, it's the right thing to do from a transparency point. Is everybody going to be happy? No. I think a bit like Gareth said at Coke, we're the same. That doesn't really matter to us. It's like, okay, you can't make everybody happy constantly and all the time. But as we carry on our journey, the things that we look at is the strategic direction of the organisation. I'm not going to go through each one of these. You guys all know all of this anyway. But what we're also really clear about is how we communicate to our employees, because that for us is the most important thing. I've spoken to a few people today about centralised decision-making versus local decision-making. We're 10,000 people around the world. I need to communicate very, very differently to my CFO of one of my divisions as I would somebody on a factory floor in Mexico. So how do we make sure that we're communicating things at speed in the right way? Because now we do actually have to react really, really quickly. I think in HR, the days of plans that lasted for years and years and years and cyclical processes, I think has really come to an end. Just look at my story over the last 4 years and the level of change that my company's been through. We've had to continually change how we're doing things, but take our employees on that journey with us as well. Now, luckily for us, through our last employee engagement survey, we actually have very high scores on engagement around reward recognition and the sorts of things that in this role that I'm really focused on. So it feels as though that we have been at least successful in taking our employees on that journey. And I can put that down to one thing, which is really putting our employees at the heart of all of our decision-making processes. Debbie might hate me. I'm kind of done, so there's a countdown timer. She's busy looking away. I could go on to something else, but I think most of us are very passionate about our roles. We could talk forever, but in terms of my story of change, my summation, I'm done. So I really want to get out in the sun.
I was going to ask you loads and loads and loads of questions.
Feel free.
But I'm hoping there are loads and loads of questions on Slido, because we have got a bit of time. In fact, I was just typing one in now to ask you. So if you take a seat.
Sure.
And maybe we'll get Slido up, and who knows, maybe somebody else has thought of a question.
There aren't any. Get out in the sun.
Yeah, now I've thought of one. Don't worry, you're not getting away that easily. But you're talking about how quickly your business is changing, and I think lots of people in this room, we've done research, business is changing all the time, but I always feel that benefits are quite slow to change. Yep. So is there a greater, perhaps, disconnect now between benefits not keeping up with speed of change, or doesn't it matter, or how does that fit in?
I think for us as a company, the benefits proposition is a little bit different, and it doesn't overly matter. But what we've always tried to do is where we have flexible benefits in the UK, you know, we've done all of the right things, but where we've had to take something away kind of on a reward proposition, we've looked at what we might be able to put in to benefits, normally at no cost. So I have a team of my local HR teams very quickly researching what's free that we can give our employees that won't really cost us anything, but it'll be quite helpful to the individual. So start with the free stuff.
Brilliant. How do you keep yourself motivated through all these changes?
Alcohol. Hey, got
so if we've learned nothing else today, just get yourselves out there for a good G&T and you'll be fine.
Yes. On a slightly more serious note, I suppose, how do I keep myself motivated? It's interesting. So I have a new boss who started a couple of weeks ago. So he's been doing a world tour. And I had my first one-to-one with him yesterday, and he asked me the same question. I literally went, I will come back to you, I'm not quite sure. I think for me there is something around our roles as senior leaders in HR, or reward, wherever, is about providing that level of consistency. It's about helping employees with their day-to-days and making their lives as easy as possible. So for me, things like problems on benefits and problems on rewards, it just becomes noise to the individual when you're stopping them from doing their job. So what I'm passionate about is the employee experience and making it as good for the employee as we possibly can.
Okay.
And more alcohol.
Do you think bonuses should be scrapped in favour of better base?
So I think this has come from a table that I was on. I think there is an argument to look at whether or not we should have variable pay. I kind of mentioned it a bit tongue-in-cheek earlier. Both in Laird, all of the organisations I've been in before, so I was Heinz before Laird, I was Barclays before that. And you spend an awful amount of money physically paying out variable payments. You also spend a lot of time, not only in HR, but also in reward and in HR. And the bit we always come back down to is it's the role of the leader to manage the expectations. We know our leaders don't do this, so why keep beating them up for not doing something that they haven't done for years? So I am starting to think about having a proper conversation, not just a kind of tongue-in-cheek conversation with our CEO to say, should we do something different? What's innovative in this space? We spent X million dollars last year on bonuses and the arguments that it created, not only across the businesses, but on the day that they were paid as well, because people's expectations aren't managed. So I think there is an argument there.
So fewer bonuses, more alcohol.
Yeah. I've got someone who used to work for SAB and they did actually have an alcohol allowance. I was very jealous.
Well, Roger used to work there. I'm going to keep us to time. There's lots of other questions coming up. They were great. We could probably sit here for another 10, 15 minutes chatting, but actually I think I'm going to say a big thank you to Tom. Very interesting session.
Thank you very much.